This is episode 16 of Youthful Perspectives. I'm your host, Mason Beerbaum. My guest today is Imam Makram El-Amin from Masjid An-Nur Mosque in North Minneapolis. During our conversation, we discussed a variety of topics from Makram's communication and leadership style within his faith community, his interpretation of the Quran's teachings and how they can be applied to daily life, the lessons he learned by being a chaplain for the Minneapolis Police Department, the discrepancies he witnesses within his community, and his dissatisfaction with being average. These topics were supplemented with engaging personal stories that were expertly told by the man himself. One side note, during our conversation, there were technical difficulties regarding one of the microphones. Therefore, we were only able to use one microphone instead of two. Though this diminished the quality of the audio, it didn't reduce the quality of the conversation. My apologies for that. But regardless, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Imam Makram El-Amin. I usually do a little intro and everything, but man, with the way things are going, it's going to be an unorthodox sort of podcast today. We're doing one mic. We're not going to even do the intro. We're just going for it. So it's an informal conversation, loosely structured. So yes.
I was just going to say, my grandson. I have a 5-year-old grandson, man. And he was we went to the park the other day, and he was trying to do these monkey bars, right? And he was frustrated because he was about 5 or 6 of them, but he got about 3 or 4 and he dropped. He just couldn't get, so he's dropped. He that kind of thing, and he ended up. He was frustrated. I said to him, I said, no. I said, you don't get everything on the first try.
Absolutely.
You don't get that. So I said, look me in my eye, and I really was wanted to be really intentional with him at that moment. And I said to him, I said, okay. I said, now let's focus. What's your goal? He said, I want to do it. I want to get across. I said, okay, focus on your goal. Focus on your goal. So I had this little thing, man, to where, and I think this kind of speaks to, I would say, in many regards, who something of my story. Where is it now? I have to find it, but I have a little recording of him doing this whole thing, man, and I shared it. It was just a proud Papa moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, here he is.
See, video of the grandson going across the monkey bars.
Yes, good. Again, yes. 2 more, let's go. Yes, one more. Get your feet up there. One more, get it. Excellent.
Now people see the finished product, but I was there the 5-6 times that he dropped, and I think that's what is the challenge with developing leadership. A lot of times people see the finished product, but not the many times that we failed, not the many times that we came up short, not the many times that we were striving to do something and it just didn't work. And one of the messages that I want to convey in this class, or just by extension, just whomever, is that, the ability to be resilient, the ability to bounce back, that's gold in our world. That's real, true currency in our world. It's not about, it's easy to look at the person, but it's really deceiving to look at a person who's highly successful and not register how many times they must have failed, how many times they must have come up short. Right? So I just think there's a lot of lessons in that. And when I saw that, where he was, I recorded it because I wanted him to see that. And I wanted him and his dad to also see that, because that was Papa's moment at the park.
Yeah.
So it was only us. But I want him to remember that.
Yeah.
When he struggles with something, I want to say, nope, come here. Remember
I'm in the monkey bars.
Remember this? So now I want those monkey bars to be emblematic of what is possible.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what That's what's important to me to transfer, in whether it's in higher ed, whether it's in the mosque, we're leading prayers, whether I'm facilitating some sort of class or whatever the issue is. These are the real lessons. This is the real currency, in the work that we do.
This book, Daily Stoic, is just a Stoicism book about the philosophy, and it's daily passages that you read, about 2 minutes maybe each day. The one today was talking about how you need struggle in your life in order to appreciate the successes that you have.
Absolutely.
Because if you only have successes, the richness and fulfillment that you feel from these successes is going to be minimized if you don't have to struggle through them first. So if your grandson would have gotten the monkey bars on the first try, good deal. I'm going to the swings next, so I'm taking the slide down.
Exactly.
And instead, he's probably going to look back in 15, 20 years and when he's going through something hard in school or a job or a relationship and just think back on those monkey bars.
Exactly. I pray that would be a residual effect of that experience. You know what I mean? That he can pull on that when he needs that. He can pull on that. I write a blog on a Substack.
Yeah.
And I do. Today I wrote about the problem with being average.
I read it before I came here.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's just a thing to where it's kind of same idea though, right? The idea is that you gotta do that. You know what I mean? You gotta push.
Don't go through the motions.
Nah. And plus, how is that experience in the richness of life anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, man, it's a lot. It's a lot of lessons that I hope to be able to communicate in the course I teach over there. So
that's great.
Yeah.
In terms of talking about family members of yours, in my research for this podcast, I was reading about it seems like your father had a big influence on you. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, man. My father, Imam Charles El-Amin, he passed about 6 years ago. It was 6 years ago, September. And very big influence on my life. He was, throughout my work, he was, in fact, he was the Imam of the African-American Muslim community, which really, him being appointed to that position is what got us from Chicago to come to Minneapolis. So this is back in the 70s. And so I watched my father as a boy, lead a congregation and lead, families and men and these kinds of things. And for a while, he was a big figure in my life, and I tried to copy everything that he did. As I started to get a little older, I kind of stepped back. I didn't want that, So I had to wrestle with that, actually, right? So there was times when I struggled with this idea of being a leader, and he just kept thrusting it upon me, kept letting me, because not only in the context of congregation and life and so on as faith, but also in my family structure. So I'm the oldest son. I'm the oldest son. I had an older sister. She's also passed recently, a couple of years ago. But I had a special place with him and how he would communicate with me as opposed to my other siblings and those sorts of things. So there was always an expectation that was there. So to say he had an influence, I think is mildly putting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I would say that he was my biggest supporter. But also he didn't mind critiquing me when I needed that too. You know what I mean? But he was, I knew it never, because he was very fair and balanced. I knew it, even the critique, even though I didn't like it all the time, I knew it was coming from a good place and a good space. You know what I mean? He wasn't just hating.
Yeah,
right?
Constructive criticism.
Exactly. He was trying to get me to be better. He was trying to get me to be more than average.
Yeah, there you go. Full circle back to the Substack post today.
Exactly.
You need those people in life. It seems like even though he was your father, it's almost like a life coach that you had by default in that regard.
I couldn't agree more. Even before I understood the benefit of coaching, right? I've come to appreciate it very much actually now. But he was that. He was that without the name, without the title. He was, and the way he spoke life into not only me but my siblings and even people in the community. When he passed away, about a year and a half after that, I ran into a guy who my father visited while he was in prison and mentored while he was in prison. And he hadn't seen my father in, it was about 18 months or so, but I know it was a little more than that actually, because he had been passed away about that amount of time when I ran into him at Hy-Vee, basically. So I'm coming in the door, he's leaving out the door. He said, "Oh, how you doing?" So he saw me, we could get to talking. And after a couple of pleasantries and whatnot, he asked me, said, "How's your father?" Right? And in that moment, I realized that he didn't know that my father had passed. So finally, when I broke the news to him, I said, "Hey, I listen, Dad, he passed away." Man, this guy literally broke down in tears. And to the point where I had to almost console him a bit. And he just kept saying, "Man, you don't know what your father did for me. Not just me, for all of us. You don't know that, right?" And then he went on to say some things. I remember your father did this. Now, I was not present for these things that he was accounting for. But knowing my father, I knew they were true. So I didn't have to even be present to understand that this is who he is, this is who he was, and so on. So I say all that to say is that my siblings and I always knew that my father wasn't always our own. He had a space, he took up a space in the community that people appreciated and needed, and we shared him. We shared him like that. You know what I mean? And so I think a part of the work that I do, whether I like it or not, resembles that. It still resembles that. And, I guess in my maturity, I can admit it.
When it comes to your role in your faith community today.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too far, I should ask, you pronounce it Imam? Is that the
Imam?
Imam. So was your father an Imam before as well?
He was an Imam, yes.
And so did you find pressure from him or maybe the community to take on that leadership role yourself, or did you come to that on your own?
That's a great question, man. I think it was definitely pressure there. It was there. I remember my mother trying to divert him a little bit, like, "Hey, just let him be, let him do." But my father was insistent that I understand what it was to lead, what it was to do those things, and so he put me in positions to do that. Sometimes it made me very uncomfortable. Sometimes, but there. All these years later, I'm very grateful because I understand the benefit of what he was trying to do, even though in that moment it felt, painful and sometimes awkward. And then I think there was a period, as I mentioned, that I was really resistant to this idea that I don't want the responsibility of leading. I don't want the burden of leading. I don't want everybody doing that, and it is that. It is that. There's a lot that goes with, leading. I mean, it's not just about being in front, it's about caring for the person who's the furthest, and that's challenging. That's just a real thing. Right. So I think that, yes, there was an expectation there, and it grew into the community expectation. And then at some point it became my expectation. Yeah.
And so now that you're fully established as a imam, how would you, because with the major religions in the world, there's like the Sabbath, quote unquote. And in Islam, that's Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Similar, yeah.
When you go, how do you go about preparing for your Friday service then, in the role that you hold? I'm curious on how you go about that.
So it's a great question too, man. I think it's not a true Sabbath in the sense of the Jewish tradition,
Right.
because they kind of pause, they take a break from the world that day, and our break is shorter in the sense that we leave the world to come to prayer, but then after the prayer concludes, we go back. And so I think that in my preparation for Friday, I think that I try to remember that we are spiritual beings having human experiences, as I say. And I try to speak to that when I address the congregation. And learning lessons from life and understanding that each of us has our own trial, our own test, but also victory and what it looks like. And sometimes it doesn't always look like you want it to look. But nonetheless, if we truly step back and evaluate it, we've gained here, slowing people down enough so that they could see the gain. I think that's part of what we do. But one of the overlays, quite frankly, is when I prepare, I generally, as a rule, speak to myself and allow everyone to listen.
Okay.
So I'm, though it may seem like I'm speaking to whomever, there'll be times when people was in the congregation or was in the prayer hall, I didn't even notice them. And I didn't notice because I was really having a conversation with myself. And I think I try to do that to, first of all, keep myself grounded, that I'm not above anything that I'm saying. I'm not perfect in this way. So this is you talking to you. And sometimes I tell them that. I said, this is me. I prepared this for me. I'm just letting you all listen to that. I say, and sometimes it's kind of humorous, but it's nonetheless it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And it's interesting because I was baptized a Catholic growing up, and now I'd consider myself more agnostic. But growing up, we'd go to church Sunday mornings, and you listen to the homily that the priest gives, and you take the gospel and the Christian tradition, and then you kind of expand on that. Is that similar to how it goes about for you as well? Is a specific verse from the Quran, and then you kind of take that and share it with the congregation, or you're still just speaking to yourself on what's on your mind that day?
No, so it's still framed through the lens of the Quran, and then the life example of Muhammad, peace be upon him. Those are the two major sources that we pull from. But again, because we're spiritual beings having human experiences, I mean, we speak to that. We speak to that in a way that allows people to see themselves. I think it's very important, for example, to be able to see yourself in the text. You have to see yourself in the text. So we're not reading a story about Moses. We are Moses. We're not reading a story about Abraham. We are Abraham, right? So and just really kind of centering our story in the text itself so that it comes alive. It speaks in a different way. And I think that is how some of the early learned would really engage the text in that way. And that has a transformative power. Listen, when I was going through my own personal struggles as a teenager, as a young African-American male in urban America, with all of the vices and things that out here, when I was struggling with that, I remember as a saving grace for me, it was the stories in the text. And I had the privilege of being around some phenomenal storytellers. They were phenomenal storytellers. My father being one of the foremost of them, and could really bring a text to alive for me and us and others, and allow for us to see ourselves in the text. And I thought that's why he was very effective in terms of how he communicated.
Yeah, because you can share the story you can share the example
Right.
that you're trying to get the congregation to hear.
Yeah.
But if they aren't listening or they aren't engaged,
Right.
then you are just speaking to yourself primarily.
Right.
So to be able to be engaging in that leadership role, that's
Yes.
extremely, extremely important.
I agree.
When it comes to the things you profess here in the mosque and then in the community, it seems like I've heard you mention before that discourse is an important aspect of Islam. Could you elaborate more on that?
I just think, the idea of words, we're in a word environment. I think it's very important to understand that when we read from the text, these are not humans' words.
Mm-hmm.
And our belief tradition said these are the words of God. So that has a different weight to them. And it's something that it becomes really not just text, but textbook at that point. So there's a whole deep science on understanding, not just to memorize the Quran, but really to understand the Quran, to really go and to learn what the word of God is so that I can extract from it the message. It's not, we're not the Quran is the language of it is like the vehicle, and it's kind of showing us where God wants us to go. You know what I mean? And but it takes you to really engage it in order to really benefit from that. So yeah, discourse is very important. I think the idea of even the vernacular that we use, I think there some that I think are more inviting than others in terms of how we use that. And I think context matters in Islam. Context is huge. Culture is huge. Language is huge. Right? Islam is not just given in a vacuum. Wherever you study it, it was influenced by the surroundings, about the environment that it came in. That was baked into it. It wasn't neutral in that regard, right? It had a through line, a truth. There was a through line, but in West Africa, Islam looked West Africa. In Europe, Islam looked European. In America, Islam should look American. In China, it should look Chinese. Because it takes on the environment and the customs and the people. It takes that on as a characteristic of that. So you're never just looking at something without it coming through a lens. You know what I mean? To see that, and I think discourse language is very, very important.
When you mention the different types of Islam that there could be, whether it be American, Chinese, etc., since we're in America today, as we're talking right now, what characteristics does American Islam have different from other ones, in your opinion?
So, yeah, a great question. So I think, one is we understand that Islam is, though it's still the fastest growing religion, it's a minority. So it's a position of being in a minority versus being in a majority. That's
right.
One.
Yeah.
That means that it competes, if you will. It competes with other faith traditions, right? So, America offers, quote unquote, it equals the playing field, if you will, right? At least that's what it professes to do, right? So that everyone can assert their way in this space, and do it unharmed. Now we've seen breaches of that, right? But the idea of that is American.
Absolutely,
that's an American thing, right? And that's where, quite frankly, how even Europeans and others and Christians and others fled Europe to come to America. It was freedom of religion that they were seeking. Yeah. Right. And so America has that. It has that, and we're that's not missed with us. We understand history and the historical context. We understand that. So all those things, I think, the having the ability to compete and argue, in the best sense of that word, argue amongst a multitude of ideas, some that have some congruence and some that directly contradict. We have to accept that, and to be Muslims in America, we have to accept that.
It's funny you mentioned the religious persecution that the early settlers were facing, and now that Islam in America is growing but still a minority, I feel like I would argue, maybe controversially, but I'd still, as you're explaining this, would say being a Muslim in America is one of the most American things that you could do.
Yes.
Because you're seeking that freedom of religion in a tolerant society, ideally, though we don't live up to it each and every day, though we try to. Was Martin Luther King, Arc of the Moral Universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yes.
So it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of perspective on it. But I never really thought of it that way.
Sure.
Because, in countries like Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan, Iraq, wherever it happens to be, the 99% of the population would be Muslim.
Right. I remember there were Muslims who came here from different parts of the world, whether they were pursuing education or, fleeing some persecution of some sort or another. And they came and settled in the spaces, and they found us engaging community. They found us engaging interfaith dialogue and things of that nature. I remember getting some very tough questions like, why do you do this? Why are you wasting time with these kinds of things? And clearly it was a situation of them not understanding context. Not understanding context. Many of these such leaders of various congregations have since also engaged now, because they've learned over the course of time that this is the space that we're in. This is what it takes to be successful, and it is really about being a good neighbor. It's really about being a good neighbor. So one of the situations, the sayings from Muhammad the Prophet, peace be upon him, in Islam, he said that we have Islam puts a heavy emphasis on the rights of the neighbor, right? And you can't. He would say things like, you don't have faith if your neighbor is fearful of your hand or your tongue. If my neighbor is fearing this, then that's an issue with my faith, right? He said, well, who is the neighbor? Who is the neighbor? He said the neighbor is the one that lives 40 doors in any direction from you. Okay, so now we're talking about the space that we occupy, right? And it's not just my person next to me. It is the community that I live. It's my neighborhood that I can live, and then by extension, it's always fanning out further and further and further. Right? So understanding that, but also in the context of in a pluralistic society where there's so much diversity, so much difference, so many different things that are taking place. I think all of that is a feature of Islam in America that others weren't presented with. They weren't presented with. So Islam is flexible enough to be the majority or the minority. It doesn't require to have the great numbers in order to thrive. It doesn't require that.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah,
because I never thought of it that way, like I was saying before. But that's cool in terms of like these interfaith dialogues that you have, and that's also within America, how the diversity we're talking about.
Absolutely.
What's one thing that you do within your community to work with the different faith groups that Minneapolis provides?
I mean, I think one is we invite them in. It's very, very rare that we'll go, a month without having guests to come and sit in our prayer service and observe and listen and break bread with us after and have questions about what we are, who we are. We host schools and high school students. Most recently, Breck and Blake School, they brought freshman students over, to sit with us and to talk about, in their comparative religions classes. So this was like a field trip for them.
Yeah.
So they came over and we talked about that, and we had a big circle in this very room, and they asked some very excellent questions, some challenging questions, some questions that I know it took courage for them to ask. So I wanted to be thoughtful in how I responded, and without rushing them through it, without diverting it. I wanted to lean into it because I think part of civilized society is the ability to ask and be answered difficult questions. When we lose the ability to do that, like the environment that we're in right now, that shows a level of how uncivilized we are. Right. So again, so I don't have to say we're uncivilized. I said just feel it. Just feel your way through. You know what I mean? And the more civil we get, the more we can sit across from someone who was raised much different than I. Come from a very different tradition, but God intended our lives to intersect at this moment. This was already written before we were born, that we would come together on a day and you would come and we would visit and we would make time for each other and we would talk about things that are very important to us. And we would do it in a way that's open, that's non-threatening, and a way that was just so this still should resemble a light in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open dialogue with one another. And I think that's one thing that we were talking about the University of Minnesota, and you talk about that hypersensitivity that might come. I can, from my personal experience, can relate to that because it seems like, especially in like higher education in America, you want to toe the quote unquote ideological line when it comes with that, and you don't want to go out and maybe express an opinion or ask a question that might be controversial in that sense. But I feel like genuine curiosity should be promoted in any capacity whatsoever. And just because you're promoting or you're asking a question or you're making a statement doesn't necessarily mean that you wholeheartedly agree with that or you subscribe to that belief.
Absolutely.
But you're just trying to learn. And that lack of civility that can come from that tension, that comes, that fear of being ridiculed for having a different opinion it's unfortunate because that's higher education, like you're talking about. That's where curiosity is supposed to be promoted.
Exactly. And even in the academy, everything is questioned. That's part of the academic discourse. When someone presents a paper, they want you to argue the paper. They want you to find where the holes at in this paper. They're not saying, look at this beautiful paper. Yeah, look how well that they wanted to have, and they base the academic rigor on the ability to do that. The ability to poke holes in something, and I think that while it has its place, that's not the end all here, right? So if we brought this academic rigor into this pace that we're in right now, we wouldn't be safe enough to be curious. It wouldn't be safe enough for us to talk openly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because the issue is I'm on the defensive about something as opposed to I'm really responding to someone's true curiosity and they're inviting me in. And I'm stepping through that threshold, openly and gracefully and hopefully an ability to respond to their curiosity.
Absolutely. And I always talk to people about how I really value diversity, like in terms of the actual concept of diversity and like cultures and people, but also diversity in thought and opinion. Yeah. Because you don't want to be in an echo chamber your whole life. No. And life loses its flair, I feel like, if you lack diversity in opinion and thought. And so to go out and talk to people that you disagree with and to be open and come in with genuine curiosity and being authentic with that person to learn. I think it's unfortunate that more people don't prioritize that or strive to achieve that. Yeah. But I feel like the byproducts of prioritizing that could persuade people to try to incorporate that into their lives.
I fully agree. And it's not always across lines. It's within the tradition. I mean, there's so many within our tradition that there are points in discourse, particularly in the faith, where it would be easier for me to communicate and find common ground with with a Christian or a Jewish person, as opposed to someone from my own tradition but a different mind. Right. And I know that to be true in Christian circles and Jewish circles and things too. So this is not a religious thing. This is a human thing. Right. So the idea to where we liken and it's easier, but really it's intellectual laziness.
Yeah.
And dishonesty, and laziness to making everyone conform to the way you think about something. Whereas when, being put into a space to where we have different ideas, and even if my conclusion is the same, my path to get there has widened. It's broadened me, right? That doesn't necessarily I'm going to agree with you at the end of the day. No, that's not the point. That's not the point, right? The point is the idea of I can understand the process and appreciate the process of engaging with someone who is very different from me, and still holding my tradition, but making room for someone else's tradition.
Yeah.
I think those two things are not mutually exclusive. Like me having a conversation with you takes nothing away from my Muslim identity.
Absolutely.
And likewise on the other end. I know that to be true. I've had a chance to work with some of the most prominent faith leaders here in Minnesota and really around the country, in the world. I've traveled the world. I've been blessed with a lot of different things. And I know that when we are at a certain level and we're engaging with each other, there's not that push to one up each other. It's not that. It's more free flowing. It's much more free flowing than members of our traditions would lead one to believe. You know what I mean? And I just think this is about spiritual maturity.
Yeah, and that laziness to fight back from that, not being the average, just clocking in, doing the bare minimum.
Exactly. And there's a lot of minimalists in faith communities. You know what I mean? They toe the line, and this is across the board. And, they don't challenge themselves. The Quran, one of the characteristics of the Quran is that it invites us to think. So God would say something like, surely in the heavens and in the earth and in yourselves are signs for those who just think about it. Now that is an invitation to be curious. That's an invitation to look at the tree and say, that's what signs should I give from that? That's not just the tree, that's the creation of God. It's not just a bird, that's the creation of God. It's not just water, that's right. So God said there's signs everywhere. There are messages that we can glean from everywhere, right? So including our interaction, right? So this takes a level, I would repeat, of spiritual maturity that will allow us to slow down enough to see the signs, to engage with them, to understand that there's something more than what meets the eye that's taking place, that's happening, and appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things when it comes to nature. Is the lessons that it can provide you if you're willing to look for them and be open to think about them, and maybe put your phone down or take out the AirPods when you're walking around and just be in silence. And what can come from that. You mentioned how you've been fortunate to travel the world and meet different faith leaders. In your opinion, and this might be putting you on the spot, but I'm curious since you mentioned this, who do you think was the most interesting faith leader that you've had the privilege of interacting with?
I had an experience with the Dalai Lama. He actually was here. He came and I was on the program with him and a few other leaders here at the University of Northrop some years ago. And backstage, he was so funny. I mean, this guy has a gazillion people who look to him for spiritual guidance and what have you. And we're in the back, and he's, before we got to the place, he's he's cracking jokes, he's making little funny things, and we're doing little stuff, and I appreciated him in that moment. There's someone that is a very weighty person, and has done a lot for people and for the world, that is still in touch with his humanity enough to make small talk and to laugh, and so I appreciated him. Right. I've been in spaces where people were very stoic and whatnot, and it was that my experience with the Dalai Lama was one that I connected with his humanity.
Yeah.
I connected with his humanity, and whether we agree on every point and all that, that was kind of immaterial at that point, right? So I was drawn into the conversation, and he made me curious. He made me curious to be patient enough to listen to him, and also to share at a level that sometimes was a little vulnerable, right? So he had that ability to do that. So that's one experience that I've had. He's probably, I mentioned him. He's very well known, obviously, but there are others that maybe were lesser known that I've had still similar experiences with.
That has to be kind of humbling to not only be in the presence of such a great faith leader like the Dalai Lama, but then also to understand that he's just I don't know if this is inappropriate to say, but just like a regular human being, in the sense that he's joking behind stage, having small talk with you. That's a very human interaction to have with someone who holds such a great title like that.
To be honest with you, that made him bigger in my eyes.
Really?
Yeah, that made him bigger in my eyes. Part of this work that we do when we lead people, is to resist the temptation of thinking it's about us. You have to check that. That's a real thing. And when I experienced that I shared, he still understood that it wasn't all about him. And even the presentation that we actually did together on the stage, and we had this packed place, and people were trying to get in and all that stuff. He even his conversation that we had, and the thoughtfulness of how he answered certain things, and again, that made him bigger to me, right? As opposed to someone who may be more aloof and not engaging. Sometimes they think that makes them bigger. That in my view is not.
Yeah, that would be I'm happy that you're able to experience something like that, because that's really something special.
Absolutely.
Especially in the role that you hold here in the community.
And it's something that stays with me. I mean, that happened many years ago. But I still remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Certain experiences are going to stay with you. They're going to do that. That's one of many.
And then the beauty of the diversity of faiths coming together and how they kind of cross-contaminate one another.
Absolutely. And I think it was a thing where we got some very challenging questions about the world and things that were happening at that day. That I remember some of those, how they framing these questions and whatnot, and not easy things, but even experiencing the human side of someone, it allows you to give people the benefit of the doubt. It allows you to show some grace with people. He's human. I'm certainly he makes a lot of mistakes. But like in Islam, we don't publish our mistakes. Islam says don't publish a mistake. It says take it to God. Take it to God, right? And the idea to where, people, that's one maybe departure in our tradition is where there's like this like there's no confessions in Islam. People will come and they'll try to do that, and before they say, I really have something, I say, listen, have you taken it to God? Have you prayed about it? And it becomes a thing to where, not that we don't want to hear them, but we also want to understand that it's not just about you saying something and putting it out there and that's going to relieve you of it. No, we have to be able to do something about these things too. And part of you, leaning into that grace is you take it to the one who created you, take it to the one who made you, right? Because lo and behold, the Imam, the leader, the counselor, whomever else, they also are dealing with their own shortcomings and their own things as well, right? So there's a principle that whatever, if I know I have a shortcoming, something I have to work on, if God keeps it covered, I don't expose it, right? And that's a rule in Islam. Enough to do that, So we want people to have good opinions, and we also want people to be able to work through their issue without having it being exposed to the world. It's one of the real challenges of social media right now.
Yeah,
that you can out somebody for a moment. And we've all had moments, and, that's one of the issues that we want to communicate even in this class. You're going to have, oh, I wish I could take that back. Oh, I didn't mean to say that like that. Oh, if I would have had better information, I would have never done that. You're going to have moments. That's spiritual beings having human experiences.
Absolutely. One issue that I'm particularly interested in, being that I'm a 21-year-old male in America, there's been some talk about it recently. There's like the quote-unquote masculinity crisis in America. Yeah. There's this famous professor from New York University named Scott Galloway who's done a good job talking about it, in my opinion. And one of the things he talks about, how young men and boys in America seem to be falling behind when compared to their female counterparts or just historically where they should be in life. Have you come across that phenomenon in your community, your faith community? And if so, how do you go about addressing that with the young boys and men that come in these doors?
I think, there's I think Islam socializes, men and women differently. And to uphold the levels of masculinity and femininity that is what we understand God has intended. Right? So when we look at these kinds of issues, we're also always looking for the prophetic tradition. So essentially, what did Muhammad do? How did he live? How did he do that? And we take that over other presentations about that, right? So Muhammad in Islam, we learn through the modeling of Muhammad, peace be upon him, that the men provide. We provide for our family. We take care of our families, right? So to not do that is a departure from the tradition. And so from a masculine standpoint, or from dealing with the common discourse about that, that's not toxic masculinity, that I want to take care of my family, that I want to do that. No, I'm trying to live in the prophetic tradition. So I don't accept a definition outside of what Islam is giving to me. That's one of the things that we've done. Now, I'm not saying that conversation hasn't happened or doesn't occur. It does occur. I mean, we're not living in a bubble. We got people who are going to school. They're in certain places. They're in academia. They're in all this kind of whatever, and this language is floating out here, right? So you have to wrestle with that. You have to wrestle with that. But in Islam, in our tradition, the issue is when you He said, if you differ upon a matter, this is in the Quran. It said, if you differ upon a matter, which means there's going to be difference. It wouldn't even be framed that way if everything was going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
He said, so when you differ on a matter, refer it back to God
Mm-hmm.
and refer it to his messenger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He said, like, what is how do I negotiate it? Refer it back to God. And this, as opposed to allowing a common language to be the influence over you, right? So there might be something in this common language that we would bring it back to God and we would find compatibility with it. We would accept it.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're bringing it back to God, are you, in that process, you're not looking for a direct response back from God, or are you looking for a direct response back from God in the form of your surroundings or maybe the thoughts that you come to attain after
That's a good question. I think what we're looking for is guidance. We're looking for a roadmap. We're looking for a pathway that will allow us to make a decision or have some discernment about a matter that's important, that Islam has spoken to, or at least set the frame for, so we can navigate through those things, right? So has every little thing been addressed in the Quran? No. Not directly, but is there a principle in our tradition that will allow us to successfully navigate this life, no matter what comes to us? Yes. Yes, it is. And so our ability to discern, our ability to uncover that thing, that's what life is about. That's what spirituality is about. That's what I speak to when I'm trying to address the congregation. The idea of that variance and how we navigate that space. Yeah.
And another role that you had within the community was being a chaplain for the Minneapolis Police Department. What was that experience like for you? And after going through that experience, did your perspective towards policing change?
It did. But not in the matter of how everybody thinks, right? So at that point in my ministry or my career, the thing that I valued most at that time was being at the intersection of places and spaces that matter. I wasn't interested in just playing it safe anymore. So I had done a lot of things. I had, we did these various kinds of projects and all that. It's time to get into the deep water a little bit here. Okay, so where your feet don't touch the bottom. Yeah, you got to work in there. You got to do that, right? So that's that's the space that I still am in many respects. Right, that particular experience, I think I went in with a certain lens because of the historical truths that have taken place and the friction between police departments and African American communities. And I think that I went in with a certain set of assumptions that didn't come out of a vacuum. I mean, I lived here. I still live in this community. So I know things, I've seen that, I've experienced things consistently over time, not just a one-off here or there, right? Here's what I come to know. I come to know that the truth that everyone on the force is not a bad person, that is a truth. I also come to know that the culture of certain institutions and department, like the department, is so strong that it can even silence good people. Both of those things are true. I learned both of those things to be true. I also learned that being a police officer is a very difficult position. Very challenging. It's challenging on your mental health. It's challenging. There are high rates of divorce and alcoholism and drug abuse amongst officers because of the pressure of that. I learned that. I also learned that there is they call it a wall that officers hit at about the 5 to 7 year mark. They hit a wall. They lose discernment. Everybody's the same. Oh, I've seen that. I know. So the ability to judge a situation upon its own merits it's a squishy now. You know, and there was an officer who we were having I think a good moment, and he said to me, he said, man, when I was a rookie, I came in and they paired him with a veteran. So now it's a rookie, and it's for a certain period, maybe 6 months or maybe close to a year. You're paired with a veteran. And he said to me, he said, when I first got it, the very first day I got in the car with him, he said, listen, man, forget all that stuff you learned in training in the academy. I'm going to show you what real policing is like. So in the academy, they said they learned this issue about empathy. They learned about all this stuff. He went down and talked about everything they had learned and preparing them. The veteran, the one had been on the force, who was experienced and decorated too. By the way, he got struck. He's decorated. His first day with him, he tells him, "Forget all of that stuff. Forget that stuff. I'm going to show you what this is." Okay, so I understand that it wasn't the training that was the issue. It was the culture.
Yeah.
It was the culture. So they need more training. They need more training. I learned that's not necessarily the case.
What aspects of the culture do you find most detrimental to overall quality?
It's the same criticism that they do for gangs. You know, it's they insulate themselves. If they protect each other, even to a fault, they'll do that.
Yeah,
they'll do that.
It's that camaraderie is a little too strong, perhaps.
I mean, I think that it becomes jaded. And even if you have a good cop, right, then like in much of society today, they'll be shamed or silenced. Even if it's been like, hey man, why are you having these guys so rough? They have everything. They have life. They have everything. Why? What? That's unnecessary. That's unnecessary. There are cops that we know that were fired, or at least relegated to where no one. This is the culture. No one wanted to partner with them anymore. Can you imagine being out on a call where there's serious danger, and you had just taken a position contrary to the culture? Who has your back? Who has your back then? These are real dilemmas. But they would criticize a minority community for there was a crime that was committed and nobody wants to say anything. They'll be critical of that. They say, well, hey, you saw this. So, you saw this happening, right? When George Floyd was murdered, the first reports that we got as a community was that he died on his own. So there was so much false that was happening too, and because they were trying to get their stuff, because this was not a good thing. It was going to come,
Yeah.
Had it not been for a courageous young girl who took a video camera and caught the whole thing, we would never have known the story. What happened to George Floyd happened to many people in this community. The difference was that it was caught on tape, and it was, and he lost his life. Sometimes they would beat you within an inch of your life. Right? So my point to you is this: is that yes. So why did I get involved? I said I had a a bit of I was a bit naive in thinking, how much of an effect that I could have on that situation. And I think that it caused me to see that it wasn't about the individual, it was more of the prevailing culture, right? And then but I understood how culture can work for you and against you. Because a good strong culture can weed out corruption. Right? But when it goes the other way, it's a problem. And then you layer historical grievances, you layer the issues of race and socioeconomic status. You just like this. Now you're just doing that. So I say I like to say I learned many things. Right? One last thing I would share about this is I was doing a ride along because we used to do ride alongs. And I would do like a 4-hour shift on the ride along. So one time I'm on a ride along and I'm with a veteran female officer. And I heard a call come through on the radio. And she responded like, hey, we're in this area. We'll stop. We'll check this out. So we do. We go. Pulls up on the it was a guy, African American. He was parked next to a park. And the door was open. I remember the door being open, the driver's side door. We pulled it from the back so we could see the door open. And he was in the car, kind of moving things around or whatever the case may be, right? Now we got a call, suspicious guy at the park. I heard the call. So I'm not guessing. I'm listening to something. Okay, it's now a go. When I got out the car, we got out the car. I have my chaplaincy jacket on. Obviously, the officer has their uniform. When we got out the car, and she looked at what's happening. So the first thing I noticed is she drew her weapon. So I was alarmed. I was a little alarmed at that, right? Because I'm looking at the situation and I see the weapon. I'm like, wow, this, like this thing can escalate really quickly, right? So she's beginning to question the guy about certain things. Get up, what are you doing? Show me your hands, all that whole stuff, right? And now mind you, he's carrying things in and out of this place or whatever it can, and he's digging in the car for something. After she told him 2 or 3 times, show me your hands, show me your hands. He's constantly digging in the car. So now she's got to see the tension rising.
Absolutely.
And I was fearful. This was pre George Floyd, by the way. But I was fearful. And so finally he came out. What he came out with was his driver's license. It was stuck down under the seat. You know where it was, but when they're telling you, show me your hands, you're saying I got to show him my ID. That kind of thing, right? So he's focusing on that, right? And he said, and so they ended up. Next thing you know, another police car pulls up. So now the 2 officers in the car. I'm thinking, oh, dang, what is this? So long and short story is that they put him in the car, did all these things and everything. And she said, and they were saying certain things about him back and forth. And I heard him talk. And the culture is so prevalent, man. When they get in go mode, they forgot I was there. They were saying something I was offended by. I'm offended by some of what they were saying. But it's because the culture is so prevalent that you forget. So right, you forget. You just in go mode. The long and short about it was that here's what at the end of the day, this is what happened. This is what we saw. We saw a man who was homeless. He was living out of this pickup truck. He pulled over to the park. He has nowhere to go. He's pulled over to the park because he's trying to clean the truck out. If there were garbage cans there, so he's he sleeps there, he eats there, he does everything in the car. So he's gathering stuff, putting it out there. Someone from across the street says, "Oh, this is something suspicious going on, right?" So finally they put him in, and when we went to the passenger side, we opened up the door, and this is after they had taken him, put him in cuffs, put him in the back of the car. So now they're just kind of searching the car. They open the passenger side of the car. I look on the floor. We look on the floor. What do we see? We see that it is a small puppy in the car. So this puppy is being taken care of by the guy who doesn't have a home himself, but he's providing shelter for the puppy. Okay. So again, it wasn't adding up. So they're talking about what they're gonna do. Well, told I said, listen, I said to them, I said, that's not what I see here. That's not what I see here. And they were trying to overtalk. I said, I don't see what you see here. His guy's not a threat. I don't see this. Now, mind you, I'm speaking from my community lens because I forgot where I was.
Yeah.
I forgot I had the chaplaincy thing on. But I'm speaking my truth, though. Eventually, they agreed to let him go. Before we got back into the car, I went up to him, and I had my card, and I asked him a couple of questions. I knew right away he was homeless. I think he was probably suffering from a little bit of mental health. He was disheveled, and. So I said to him, I said, do you need anything? He said, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. He said, I gave him my card. It was to here. I said, we had a food. I said, go here. Show them my card. Tell them I sent you here. They will take care of you there. Man, do you know this guy? He hugged me so tight and put his head almost like a child. And he just said, thank you, like thank you. And I mean, I learned that officers have a lot of leeway. I learned that they have a lot, they could exercise their judgment a lot. It's not always by the book. They have discretion. They have discretion. And they use discretion, I think probably because I was there, to advocate on his behalf. They used some discretion because they could have told him they had already made up the whole scenario, why come they could have done it, and blah, blah, blah. And I basically talked them down. Like, hey, listen, that's not what I saw here. And I was like, I'm not going to be quiet about that. So all that to say, man, is that I understood how strong the culture was. And even after that, there were attempts to make us as chaplains choose. Like it was like an us or them conversation. Like I couldn't represent the community. I had to be that. I said, no, you all came to me and said, we need liaisons for this community for better relations. I don't work for you. I work with you. So they tried to change the dynamic, but that's how strong the culture is, though, right? So I'm giving you all this background, man, to say that was an experience for me that was too big for one person to have to try to change. I mean, we saw that. Are there good people on the force? There absolutely is. There absolutely is, man. People who are hardworking, who really are in their profession for the right reason. I believe that in my heart. I saw that. I met them. But they are in a machine that will silence you and smother you, or at least cost you your career if you buck it too much. So Both things are true.
Now, do you think this kind of comes back to the leadership aspect we're talking about. How does one change a culture like that? Do you think it stems primarily from the leadership within the force? Is it from community members or city council members being extra critical about the job that they do, like we saw after George Floyd, or like the federal government coming in and conducting investigations into them? How does one go about changing that culture?
Again, I think that the question is a fair one, but it's also one that requires an answer that many people don't have the patience to listen to, right? So understand that the police are the enforcers of the Constitution. They are the front-facing enforcer of the Constitution, of whatever the law is. Yeah. So before I get to see a judge or anything like that, I'm going to be confronted by an officer that says I crossed the line with the law, even though, so that's my first encounter with them. Okay? So, and we see it now. We have law enforcement, whether, they've been deployed, and now military deployed into cities. And they have this stoic kind of scenario because that's the indoctrination. That's the indoctrination, right? I can't see me as a person. I have to become a combatant now. You're not living this to me. I'm walking. I live here. What do you mean? I live here. I live here. The other thing I would say is the complexity of systemic racism and structural racism, all those kind of things too, also have fed into those things that have created this situation. So there's no short route out of it. There's no short route out of it. It's always going to be levels of tension. There are going to be times when we make some progress, and there's going to be times when we get setbacks. Like we're going to be, but I will say this. I don't believe that it is a product of people not knowing what to do. I don't believe that anymore. Like they just don't know what. No, they know. It's not what to do, how to do. It's will to do. They don't have the will to do this. This perpetuates a certain thing. It keeps it where it is, and it's also about a narrative. I just came from the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. It's the Equal Justice Initiative. And Brian Stevenson curated this. He was the subject of that movie, Just Mercy. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I did not.
Michael B. Jordan played it.
Okay.
In the movie. And he said one thing. He said something, many powerful things. One thing he said, oppression and racism and unfair laws and stuff like that. He said, that's not the biggest crime committed against our people. It's not. The biggest crime committed against our people was the narrative that was created to make the treatment of us okay. It's the narrative that was created to make the treatment like, oh, those are just that, When people begin to adopt, that's the biggest crime, because all of the other things is just a consequence of a narrative that they've been led to believe about my value and my worth.
Like you see a homeless person perhaps having a bad trip on whatever drug they happen to be addicted to.
It's their fault.
Yeah, you look at them and they're homeless. Who cares?
Exactly.
That's not humane.
No,
it's not right.
And even for us as Muslims, we see people asking for things. Some have the audacity. I mean, that's why it's a human thing to say, well, if God wanted them to eat, He would have taken care of them already. Not understanding that God puts you in this space to register something was wrong and to respond to it. God did do something about it. He put you there. It's the difference between taking a narrative and weaponizing it against someone, as opposed to seeing the fullness of the picture and activating your agency to actually make the change. Right? This is the kind of discourse that we have here.
And again, comes back to just being above average.
I mean, listen, there's, you know, there's no reward for average.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, either we're pushing the envelope or we're complacent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so well, I didn't do it. Well, did you have the ability to do something about it? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. Or if you see something that you don't like in your community and you complain about something not being solved while not doing something yourself,
Exactly.
then you're just as guilty to blame for that problem residing in your community as well.
The same way that it was a tradition from Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, very well though, he said, when you see a wrong in society, with the community, change it with your hand. Like, do something about it.
Right.
If you're unable to do something, then change it with your tongue. Speak out about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're unable to do that, then dislike it in your heart. Hate it in your heart, but know that that's the weakest faith.
Mm-hmm.
That's the weakest expression. Just to see something like, I don't like that. That's the weakest expression of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he gave us the weight of each thing. But first thing, and this is in the wrong place, put it in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't do that, I said, that's in the wrong place. It needs to be, we need to get that in the right place. I got at least, or now I know it's in the wrong place. I can't do that. I won't speak out. I just, that should be in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The issue is that, that the pecking order or the order of importance of priority has already been laid. Now we could take that and apply that in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to do that, yeah. We said we live in a community that 10 or 12 years ago, a study was done on this particular zip code that we're sitting in right now, and was found to have the highest disparities in the entire state of Minnesota.
Really?
Where we sit today.
Mm-hmm.
Pick your area. Education, highest gap. Home ownership, highest gap. Business front, highest gap. Right? Whatever you measure to be the quality of life of a place, it was the biggest disparities here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I look who lives here. I look at tradition who lives here. I've grown up here. I love this place, but this place has issues.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So again, the idea is at some point in time, there was a narrative that was created that said that the people who live in this area are not as valuable as people who live in other places. One last point to this, man, is that most recently, there was the church shooting.
Yep, Annunciation.
Terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before that and after that, 2 times after that, there was mass shootings in Black areas in this community. More people were killed than happened in the church. Why? What happened there?
Media flocks to the school shooting, church shooting aspect of it.
Yeah, and those were predominantly white people.
Yep.
Okay? The people that were killed, these are people who lived in encampments. Many of them used drugs. They're homeless. They had all kinds of things. So there's a narrative created that, it's just those. This is those people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the idea is to say this happens every day. What we end up doing here is we build up, not that it doesn't hurt. It hurts every time. But the idea is that it's such it's you unfortunately, man, you come to accept that you're not valued as well as others. There's no outcry. The vice president's not coming here for that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing that. So excuse a community that gets really jaded about is this place for us really?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I just laid out of the freedoms that brought people here and all that. So we live in we live in a space of multiple contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, I'll tell you about the upside, but if I tell you about that and not acknowledge that, I'm complacent, right? If I dwell over here and I don't tell you about the opportunity, then I'm not being fully truthful. It's complex.
Yeah.
Right. But some things are clear. Some things are clear. Right. And again, the narrative, he said the narrative that was created to make the treatment or mistreatment of some okay in the eyes of the law and the eyes of healthcare and the lives of life and the life of education and the life of nutrition. Nutrition, man, food deserts. They call it food deserts, and they call them food swamps. You heard of food swamp?
No, I've heard of food deserts, but not food swamps.
Food swamps is where there is the lack of access to healthy food, but there is an abundance of fast food and things that will be detrimental to your health. So you live in food swamps.
Which is just as bad.
Or I mean, it's some say it's killing yourself slow.
Yeah.
So if a person lives in this food swamp, but then the rates of hypertension and diabetes and heart disease are higher in this area, I mean, it's like it's not rocket science. I mean, we get it. Cheap, bad food is cheap. Bad food is cheap. So I can go and I can feed my family with $20 off the dollar menu.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, for people, we can do the math around here. We can figure what that is. Not that I'm compromising my son's future because he develops a taste for this as opposed to vegetables and cucumbers and, these kind of, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the sick kind of thing, man. It's a spiral. Sometimes we try to break out. So part of our work is to resist it, though. We're trying to resist it.
And how do you go about resisting it? Is it the being open to different dialogues and that discourse, contacting political leaders within the community?
All that's a part of it. The biggest issue is what can we do for ourselves? What can we do for ourselves?
Self-sustainable.
And the issue is that, most people, if they're honest with you, they will tell you that they will let you know that no one's coming for us. No one's coming for us. So the idea is that we try to be as resilient as we can by addressing these issues in our space. So whether it's housing that we provide or foods that we provide, we're doing that because not only because it's a need, but we're also we know we're raging against a machine here too. We're raging against a machine.
If that machine, I'm assuming, were to change its functions and wanted to cooperate with you within that struggle to uplift your community so those discrepancies aren't as drastic, I'm assuming that'd be welcomed with open arms.
I think it would be, but again, historically, that hasn't been the case. Historically, there have been some various things that have taken place, so it's complex. But historically, there hasn't been. There has been intentional divestment from certain areas, right? My wife is on the Minneapolis Public School Board. She's an elected official. She's in her second term. During her term, she actually had to go and led the effort to remove racial covenants from school properties that still existed like 50, 60 to 80 years ago.
Really?
Where properties could not, it was on the books, could not be sold to Black people. Could not be. It was against the law to be. She reversed that kind of thing. She did that in the last 2 years. Okay, so again, man, think about we've had Obama was president. We had all kinds of stuff.
Right.
right? I mean, people look at flashpoints about certain things happen or whatever the case may be, but yet in the last 18 months, we still had racial covenants on the deeds of public schools, right? These are still realities that people face a lot, right? So, as a person of faith, how do I navigate that? I first and foremost, I put my faith and trust in God. That when all this is temporary. Our tradition tells us that what's with you is temporary. What is with me will last. This is God speaking to us in our book. Whatever it is, good or bad, it's all temporary. He said, "I will settle all affairs." I will settle all affairs. So we resolve to wit that I may not get the fullest justice in my lifetime. My father, before he passed, he said as much. I may not live long enough to see all these wrongs be righted. He said, but I pray that you see him in your lifetime. And I've said the same thing now to my son and to my grandson, that I'm trying to build resilience in, because he's going to have to fight the machine. Don't quit. Focus on your goal. Get there. That's not about monkey bars, man. That's about building resiliency in my through my loins. I want to build resiliency so that he has enough muscle memory in him as he matures to fight the machine.
And this sense of resiliency is reminding me of a term in Islam, jihad. Correct. That's jihad. Self-improvement. And that's kind of been warped in contemporary America about what that's supposed to mean.
Absolutely.
Could you define what jihad means?
Yes.
For those that aren't as familiar with the concept?
Absolutely. I'll give it to you in the way of a quick story. So, in the early days of Islam, the Muslims were fighting a battle. There were they were a small group, and they were fighting a battle of those who was opposed to Islam in that part of the world. And after being successful fighting that, it was basically like a skirmish. They were successful defending themselves. Muhammad, peace be upon him, he gathered them all, and he said, we have now completed the small, it's called Saghir, means the small jihad. He said, now it is time for the greater jihad. So they're like, wait a minute, we just fought a battle and we lost. We had casualties. We lost some people. What do you mean the smaller jihad? So he said the smaller jihad is when you're trying to fight someone outside of you, because I can easily justify that's the enemy, and I'm justified in fighting them, and whatever happens, happens. He said the greater jihad is what he called jihad bin nafs. He said it's the struggle within yourself to be right before God. That's the big jihad. It's again, it's easy when you want to look outside. The enemy's over there, I'll fight the enemy. What about when the enemy is in here?
Yeah.
That's the greatest jihad. That's the original meaning of jihad. Now, it has been, as you said, it has been taken out of its context and has been weaponized against it. And some of it is due to Muslims using it out of context. But some of it is that America or media or whatever, stirring the pot. Yeah, it's that too.
And to focus on a time where that concept really came into America's psyche was 9/11. I was born in 2004, so I wasn't alive for it, but I assume you're quite familiar with that day in September. Being a Muslim in America at the time, what was that experience like for you? Do you think George Bush at that time did a good enough job trying to protect the Muslim American community following those attacks? What was your experience like during that time in history?
It's very interesting you say that. You wasn't even born then, right? I was like 30 or something. So we have these flashpoints. 9/11 was one of those major ones. But if I think this kind of this revisionist history that says that there wasn't discrimination before then. There was a lot of discrimination before then. There was a lot, and people point to that because of the historic significance of that event. But we lived through that. My parents, they lived through stuff. So that's one thing, right? I think that allowed for people to see a multiple things kind of coming to a head at the same time, right? Yeah, people who did a horrendous criminal act. It wasn't just criminal by American law and standards. It was criminal in Islam. Those are criminal acts in Islam. I'm not even talking about going down to the courts, and I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about if you differ upon a matter, refer it back to God and His messenger. We talked about that a moment ago.
Yep.
So I'm going to look at that lens through the lens of what God has says through our book. Right? That act is condemned. It's against the law. That law. That law. Okay? So let's just be unequivocally clear about what that is. Okay? So, but again, the intellectual dishonesty that took place, that as a result of that, people violating this law and this law, right? It violated two sets of laws. It opened the door to a level of intellectual dishonesty that, again, helped to create a narrative that some people wanted to push anyway. Okay? So the idea that jihad and these words have been used and twisted in a certain way now has also made it very easy for Muslims to face discrimination. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it. We're seeing whole people being wiped off. We're seeing genocide. I mean, intellectual dishonesty calls it a war. Well, war is you have to have armies. You have to have armies. No, you have one force slaughtering other people and justifying it and they do it with immunity. That's what we are seeing, right? I'm saying we have to just tell the truth. What are we saying? Let's just tell the truth. Now, it's because if people can go in and say, well, it's because of this and because of that and because of this and because of that. Let's say that that's true. Let's say that that's true. Does it justify what's happening before us? If we're here in America, and let's say it is some vigilantes that took the law in their own hands, and they call themselves defending a community, and they came against law enforcement, right? Let's say that happens, and it happened in Minneapolis, right? Would it be justified for the MPD to indiscriminately kill everybody in this community?
No, it would not.
So then how come we could say that is okay, or at least be silent about it, right? If because the undergirding to that is that some people's lives are more important than other people's lives. That's where it goes. So that's where the jadedness happens. That's where people get angry. That's what I mean. What does God say in other places? What about the Sudan? What about other places in the world too? And that's not the only place the atrocities are going on, right? But what happens is that's how children grow up angry. You want to root out extremism. You want to root it out. If you really want to do that, then you have to be a better neighbor in the world. Be a better neighbor in the world. You can't shut people out of goods and resources and take things from them, and then they finally push back in a very desperate way. You're gonna make them become the villain. What is this? It's intellectual dishonesty.
And I think referring to the conflict in Gaza right now, as we were just a moment ago, and that extremism part, if you go in there and you're Israel and you go and you kill a conclave where there might be some Hamas fighters, but you kill 10 civilians, and then their family members see what happens, do you think that's going to cause them to step back and think, maybe those people, that might have been my brother, but maybe he did deserve to die? Or are they going to come back and think, well, they just did that to my brother. What's stopping them from doing that to me? I'm going to have to go out there and stop it before it happens.
So here we are in the comfort of Minneapolis. And we can reason to that end. Think of them being that pressure cooker every day, come on. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like, I remember when I traveled to the Middle East with some of my interfaith partners. And we were talking about this issue, hot button issue, obviously. And they said, he said, Makram, he said, it sounds like you are justifying what's taking place over there. And I said, that's interesting. I said, when a serial killer indiscriminately kills, people and finally gets caught, right? Law enforcement would do everything they can to study this person, to figure out why in the world would they do something like that. This whole criminology. It's a whole science. People get degrees and make a lot of money studying the mind of people who have done things that are like, why does that actually happen? Right? Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer and all these other people. What would make them I mean, if it was just that dismissive, who cares why he did it? No, there's a utility with understanding the mind, that what produced the mind that will cause that kind of destruction to the human person. That's good for people to know. But yet still, you don't want to understand how come a 15-year-old, 14-year-old male man can wake up. Think about this, man. We both woke up, thank God. But we didn't wake up thinking, today is my last day. We didn't wake up thinking, I'm doing it today. Today's my last day. I'm going to sacrifice myself for the good of a greater cause, because I don't see any other viable alternative. So I strap things onto me. I go into the public square and I detonate myself, hopeful to, I'm sacrificing myself in order to cause harm to people who've been harming. I mean, can you think of a mind? What had to be going through their mind to decide? It wasn't like he went out and got into a car accident. He decided when he woke up, today is my day. So we shouldn't have a concern about what drives a person to that level of come on. Let's not do that. I said, and so I said to my colleague, I said, listen, I said, what you're doing is you are conflating uh, uh, an explanation with an excuse. Those are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
I can explain how come a thing happens without absolving a person who did a wrong from the. To conflate the two is intellectual dishonesty. You're trying to tell me both those things mean the same thing. They don't mean the same thing. They do not mean the same thing. Don't play with my intelligence. They don't mean the same thing. I can explain how come things happen and things went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that, but people have to be patient enough to go back up the line to figure out, listen, this happened and this happened and this happened and create these conditions and people then all of a sudden they had no, and then that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Was it wrong? Yes, it was wrong. But go back up the line. Go back up the line. People are that's what that people don't have the will to do. They say the same thing about our people, man. So people will shoot people and hurt people. You put people in places and spaces, man. You shrink the resources. Yeah, it's more people than resources. All of a sudden, people are competing with each other. You do this, there's drugs in the mix. There's all kinds of things that are going to take place. This is a pressure cooker. This is going to happen. It's not a matter of if. And I live here. I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a matter of if. And then someone else happens, some atrocity happens in a different part of the city, and people are like, it was a great neighborhood. I can't believe this happened. No one expects it to happen. We don't even have the luxury of even saying that. You know how that's like the fingernails on the chalkboard when somebody said, because it's like I don't even have the privilege of really even making an assumption. I don't have the privilege of even being appalled that it could happen. Of course, it's going to happen in my neighborhood. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's drug dealers up the street. When I came in today, there was a person that was having an issue that looked like it was fentanyl related. Half a block up from the miles, the fire trucks and the MET, they were there.
Mm-hmm.
I passed it on the way so I can come sit with you today. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? These are the kinds of things, man, that we want to have honest and frank conversations about without gaslighting people. Don't gaslight. Don't somehow twist it like it's my fault. Or it's people. Do you think people want to be hooked on drugs? Do you understand what the life of a drug addict is? That's not a glamorous situation. You sleep outside. You're looked down upon. Even your own people look down upon you. You don't have enough of anything. Your health is bad. You deteriorate. You vanish. Literally, your family can't trust you anymore. Right? You never seem to have enough of anything. It's always a situation where you're the threat because you need the self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the resources, so I'm looking for something to help preserve me. So that means if I have to take something, I'm going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have people like me who is in a position I could live in any community that I want. God has blessed me like that. I could live in any community that I want. I purposely choose to live here though, because I feel like I'm not going to parachute in and be a savior. I live here. I eat. I live. I work. I play, and I pray in this community. I have a vested interest in this space, being because I showed you who I'm.
Yep.
I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a vested interest in that, right? So these are the realities of folks, right? And it's my faith tradition that obligates me to respond. It's my faith that does that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my faith that obligates me to respond. Do what you can. Can you save the world? Can you end homelessness? Can you end people going to bed hungry? No, that's too big for me. Can you do something? Yes. Do what you have the capacity to do. My faith requires that of me.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that if I return, my life is over here. I stand before God because we believe we're accountable to God. And God questions me. And the prophet, he said, everything under your authority, you will be questioned about. Everything that you have access that you used for your benefit, you will be questioned about. So when I stand before God, and God says, what did I give you? And I have to bear with it, everything he gave to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, what did you do with what I gave you? I want to have an appropriate answer to that question. So what is my life now? My life is working to have an appropriate answer to that question. That is coming.
That reminds me, I don't know if you're familiar with this speech by Robert Kennedy Sr., Tiny Ripple of Hope.
Mm.
I think he gave it to a South African group of students during the time of the apartheid going on down there. It's like 1966. And he talked about how there'll be few people in the course of history that can make individually can make a difference that changes the life of others. And he cites Martin Luther, Thomas Jefferson, who have you. But you can go out in the world and make a tiny difference.
Yes.
And send forth a tiny ripple of hope.
Yes.
And within that tiny ripple comes this giant wave that can knock down the mightiest walls of oppression.
Absolutely.
And what have you. And I think
I believe that.
The way you're describing
I believe that.
Your faith and the way you go about it, it's very similar.
I believe that. I tell our congregation all the time, we are not responsible for outcomes. We are not responsible to solve all of the world's problems.
Mm-hmm.
We are responsible to give effort within our capacity. It's effort that we're responsible for, not outcomes. God takes care of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's beyond us. But effort, that's where we're on par with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to do things maybe more than me or whatever, but whatever your capacity, push the limit for good.
Mm-hmm.
Push the limit for good. That's what Islam says.
Mm-hmm.
So some can do a lot. Others can do a small bit, and part of the thing is praying for those who can do more so that they can do more.
Yeah, give them the strength.
And there you go. But everybody has a part to play.
Mm-hmm.
No one gets to sit on the sidelines. That's the issue, though.
Mm-hmm.
No one gets to sit on the sidelines. Everybody has a role to play in this machine that we're facing.
It's like in Dead Poets Society, where he says the great play of life will go on, and you may contribute a verse. And what is that verse that you're going to contribute to the great play of life?
Great play of life.
Yeah, it's something worthy of thinking about.
Absolutely.
You don't want to just dismiss that as a theoretical concept. That can be applied to picking up a piece of trash on the road, to running for public office, to whatever happens to be, just being a better friend.
And I mean, and sometimes just saying hello to a person.
Flashing a smile.
To a person who has been made to feel as though they're invisible. Nobody sees me. That's a dangerous place to be in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody sees me. Nobody hears me. They don't hear my plea. I'm a make them hear me now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very dangerous, that's a dark place to be in. Where the suffering of the people go unaddressed, unrecognized. You can start to justify stuff in your mind that right. So all of these things, man, all of these things that I think our tradition is calling us to. Sometimes life presents moments to you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes life gives you a moment. Or and truth be told, there are multiple moments, right? And it's like these signature things that become turning points, mm-hmm. right? And we've come to accept, man, that part of the challenge of life, man, is to meet moments. You got to meet these moments. We're living in a moment right now, mm-hmm. under this context. It's a moment right now. The things are being threatened of us, and it's not just lows, all over the globe, man. There's a sense that the humanity is being set back in many ways. I made a post today, man, about I'm just praying for my city. This violence seems to be on the rise, and I said we have to hold people accountable. I said, but we also have to deal with the real causes of the conditions. Because part of the response to what's going on right now is to be punitive, hold them accountable, lock them up, throw them, and never address the real cause. Islam says you have to be balanced. I have to hold people accountable because this can't be the Wild Wild West. I can't have people just being in harm. I got to preserve safety. We have to do that. But Islam says I have to double down on the root causes that made this viable. Mm-hmm. I have to be even-handed when it comes to this, right? So these are principles that ring true for us.
It almost makes me think that speaking out against some ill in the world, yeah, and displaying your outrage, but then not doing anything, yeah, is arguably worse than being naive that even occurred in the first place. Because by displaying your outrage for something and not do anything of it shows that you recognize that that's wrong, yeah, and you are still going to neglect, yeah, the opportunity to act upon that.
You gotta act. That faith without action is dead. I think that's biblical. Mm-hmm. And in Islam, it says, God says, those who believe and they do good deeds. Mm-hmm. It's not you can't say the belief and good deeds are married. Mm-hmm. They're married. So sometimes in this bifurcated life, we try to divorce them. I have faith. Where's your proof? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I mean, we can literally I haven't seen you move against any of the things that are the world is on fire, and you have access to water. What is this? That's the definition of not to have faith. Mm-hmm. That's not to have faith. I have a conviction. If my conviction does not propel me to act or to move, then I question it. Mm-hmm. I question it. We make that kind of mindset here very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, as I say, our role as faith leaders is to comfort the afflicted. People have been hurt, wrong, abused. We have to comfort them. We got to care for them. We got to make space for them, make room for them. But sometimes our role is to afflict the comfortable, mm-hmm, to make it very uncomfortable for people who are resting. It's the flip of the coin. Yeah. So part of my work, is I toggle between the two. So what do you do? I'm toggling between these two spaces, trying to, bring about a better condition overall. Sometimes I'm comforting, sometimes I'm afflicting, I'm challenging, making you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the world is beating you up, and I tell you you're going to be okay. Trust God, comforting you. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the role is complex. I didn't know that when I began. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it.
But you learned it through experience.
Absolutely.
And then when times are tough and you feel alienated from what's around you,
Yeah.
is it God that gives you hope to keep moving forward? Or what would you say gives you that motivation to keep on doing the good work?
Yeah. I think that it absolutely is that. And sometimes I have to trust God. And sometimes trusting God means I need to be quiet. Sometimes trusting God means that I don't have the words in this moment. So I have to trust God in this moment until I find my words.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with some of the things that we've seen, I mean, how can you explain it? How can I explain to my grandson what's taking place in the world? So sometimes the weight of it is so heavy that I don't have words for it.
Mm-hmm.
And in those moments, you come to understand what trusting God means. You come to understand that I don't have the agency, I don't have the ability to move. I don't have the ability to affect what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
What's before I don't have the ability. I have the will, but not the ability. I want to do something, but I can't. That's when trusting. That's when you know.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's a great theoretical exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, so people have the luxury of the privilege of doing or not doing. And no. You want to do but you have the no ability. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Now where's your faith now?
Mm-hmm.
You still believe? You still believe now? Yes, you have to still believe.
It reminds me of when I interviewed a rabbi on the podcast. He talked about the story of during the Holocaust when the Jews would get marched to gas chambers and they would be saying, trust God, trust God. They didn't want to die, but they knew it was going to happen. But they put their faith in God and they knew it was going to be all right. And that can be taken in turn for those that were able to survive those atrocities.
That's right.
And maybe you lose your whole family, but your personal self was preserved. What are you going to do now that you have that second opportunity in life? And obviously, for most people, we don't ever, and I'd hope we never experience something that extreme. But sometimes in your own personal experience, something can feel that extreme if you're based on the experiences you have in life.
Absolutely.
And so what are you going to do when that occurs?
Absolutely. That is the stuff that life is really made of.
Mm-hmm.
Some would argue that's when life starts. It's just, you're in that peculiar spot where that you find yourself you don't have the ability to affect the change. You don't. What happens then? For us, we pray. For us, we read text in scripture. For us, we gather and we have reminders to each other, because that could be enough for me to lose my good senses. I could lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me being a good brother to another of my brothers, sometimes I have to see him in his vulnerable state, and I have to remind him of what God says, because he and that's that he could forget.
Mm-hmm.
He could forget, and it was justifying when I said, no, remember God said. Remember Muhammad said that we should. Islam says I have to build that container. I got to build that spiritual space for him, because he's constrained. Life is he's constrained. He can't. He's constrained.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to build that spiritual container, spiritual. And I'm saying it like I do it. I'm saying it has been done for me. I lost my daughter 1 year ago, and if it wasn't for my community building that spiritual container for me and my wife and my family, it was unexpected. Then that's enough for you to go somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
But we remember, and we were reminded about the mercy of God.
Mm-hmm.
We were reminded about God said there's no suffering anymore. She wasn't hurting anymore. She wasn't hurting. We were reminded about that there are things that we could do on her behalf that will earn her credits with God, even beyond her physical life. So we began to take the pain, process it, and go through the grief and the more of losing her, but it began to shift our paradigm. It didn't take away what happened. It changed how I was viewing it. And sometimes that's the saving grace for people. That's what happens. That's not why do bad things happen to good people. It has its philosophical questions. I mean, when bad things happen, they're indiscriminate. They talk as though that's not going to be happening. No, I mean, that's what happens. Everything, bad things don't only happen to bad people. What does that mean? And then what is a bad people? What is a good person? See, even the way we construct certain things, comes from a place, a space that may not be true. So, lots to say about that.
Yeah. I know I could sit here and talk for hours and hours on end with you, but I don't want to keep you away from your duties here at the mosque. So I think we'll end it here. But thank you, sir, for giving me the time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for the time and the thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Youthful Perspectives. Of the many things I learned during our conversation, I was profoundly struck by Imam Makram's personal experience with the Minneapolis Police Department and the culture that existed within it. I was also moved by his perspective relating to gun violence in the Minneapolis African American community and its lack of media coverage and citywide attention. But I was inspired by his dissatisfaction with being average and the emphasis he places upon those to right the wrongs they see within their lives. If you're unable to do that, you should speak out against them. And if even that is unachievable, you should internalize that dissatisfaction within you and strive to discover other ways you can improve yourself and your neighbor's condition. As referenced in the podcast, I find Bobby Kennedy's Day of Affirmation speech adequately captures the sentiment Imam Makram projects into his community. To quote the former senator himself, "Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and then the total of all those acts will be written in the history of this generation. For each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. So with that, I ask you all, how will you send forth a tiny ripple of hope in your lives?"